Since Edge of Eternities is right around the corner, we will look at some potential very good Pauper cards today. We will do some honorable mentions and then we will dive into a top 5 of cards which will probably be good in Pauper, or they at least have some potential. So let's jump right into it. So the first card here isn't really powerful. It really would be if the text was exactly like this, but it isn't anymore. There has been a day Zero Errata, which means they have basically changed the text. So it was a 3 mana instant and it said target creature gets +1/+0 and gains vigilance until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature and opponent controls. So what was really interesting that the initial target doesn't need to be your own creature. So you could basically target a Writhing Crystallis and opponent controls and then deal the damage equal to its power to itself, right? So you would basically kill it for 3 mana, you didn't even need to control a creature, so this has been changed. There was a day Zero Errata, so now the first target is a creature you control, and it's basically, you know, we've seen the printing of this card many times. It's not very good, but I just thought it is real interesting, because if this card was exactly in this position with this exact text, I think it would be really good in Pauper actually in the green decks. So first, let's dive into the honorable mentions, and first on the honorable mention list is Squire's Lightblade. 1 mana artifact, it's an equipment, it has flash, and when it ETBs, we attach it to target creature we control. That's always really good, and it gains first strike until end of turn, and the equipped creature gets +1/+0. The equip cost is set at 3 if you want to re-equip it later. So I'm not really sure if there is a place for this card in the competitive format, which means in the meta game, but there probably will be some attempts to make it work with something like Glinhawk, maybe even in a mono white deck. You guys know we built a lot of mono white decks with Glinhawk on this channel, and it is really good if you can make it work, and this card would fit right in. So I think people will try to make this work, but I'm not really sure if it will be a metagame staple. Probably not, to be honest. Next on the honorable mention list we have the Slag Drill Scrapper. It's an artifact for 1 mana, which is awesome. It's a creature, it's a 1/2, which means it has the Inspector stat line, which is pretty good in Pauper, and it has an ability for 2 mana, and tapping it we can sacrifice another artifact or land and we draw a card. So this is very sneaky. I think most people won't really notice this card, but I think it could be very good in the right deck. So basically 2 mana to sacrifice an artifact and draw a card is not even bad. If you sacrifice something like a Wellspring or some other artifacts, some of which will be later in this video, you basically draw 2 cards for 2 mana, and I think that's pretty sweet, especially if you stick it on a creature that's a 1-drop. So I'm not really sure if there is a home for this card, but if there is a home, I think this card is really powerful. Next up on the honorable mention list is Perigi Beckoner, 5 mana 4/5 with Warp 2. So Warp is a combination of Evoke and the Adventure mechanic. So we may cast it from our hand for the warp cost, we exile the creature at the beginning of the next end step, we may cast it from exile on a later turn. So that's pretty cool, but 5 mana is obviously a lot for Pauper, and the ETB is basically a supernatural stamina. The only bad thing about this is that you have to cast Warp as a sorcery, which I think makes it a little bit worse, but the big potential with this card is that if you have 2 copies and a Suck Outlet, they go infinite with one another, which means if you have like a Carrion Feeder or a Mortician Beetle with a Suck Outlet or a Bloodthorn Vampire, you can basically make those creatures infinitely big and then finish the opponent with something like Rite of Consumption. I think that's a little bit too clunky though, and the current versions of Mono Black Sacrifice are a little bit stronger and faster, but I just wanted to mention this card because it's really interesting and we have talked about it on the community Discord as well. Last card on the honorable mention list is Lux Knight Breacher. I don't think this card is extremely good, but I think it's really fun. It's basically a 4 mana 2/2 when it ETBs. It actually enters with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other creature and or artifact we control. So you know, there are the artifact lands in Pauper, so this can be a really big 4 mana creature. Now, what do you do with the huge 4 mana creature in Pauper that doesn't do anything else? I think you don't do much, to be honest. I think it's just a, big guy. Maybe you will sacrifice it with Fling or something, and that will make a really fun experience in Pauper. Maybe. I don't think this card will be very competitive, but I genuinely think it's really fun because we have seen how powerful can All That Glitters be. Of course, that card is 2 mana, so it's infinitely better than this one, but I think this deserves a mention for sure. Lux Knight Breacher is a really cool card. So we are here in a top 5, and we will start things off with a Melded Moxite. 2 mana red artifacts, when it ETBs we may discard a card if we do draw 2 cards, and for 3 mana we can sacrifice this. We create a tap 2/2 robot token. It's an artifact, that's pretty good, but I think the most important part is the first half. So the cool thing, it's an artifact, not many artifacts do this. Actually, this is the first one that does it, which is obviously very nice. Why is this nice? Well, the artifact type is the most important type. Most of these cards that do this effect of discarding and then drawing 2 are either sorceries or instants, and there is 1 enchantment, but that's not really a super relevant type, so I think the Moxite is better. This will definitely find its place maybe in a Burrow Synthesizer, if it finds its place at all, although that deck has the Synthesizer itself, so do you need a different card to bounce and generate you the card advantage? I'm not sure. We will see right after we play with it. I will definitely be experimenting with this card, but when you look at this card, you definitely see some potential, so we will see what it brings into the Pauper metagame. So at spot number 4 here we have Nutrient Block, 1 mana, it's an artifact and the food as well. It has the indestructible keyword, which is definitely very interesting with cards like Kenku Artificer. It has 2 mana and tap it. We can sacrifice it too and gain 3 life because it's a food, and when it is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we draw a card, which is the most important part. It's very comparable to something like Chromatic Star. I think it's very similar, although it's indestructible, which I'm not sure how relevant will that be unless you play some crazy brew with Kenku, which I think could actually work really well and be really fun. The only difference is it can actually give you life, and it has a really good synergy with the Cauldron Familiar. There has been a lot of decks that tried to make food work right after Final Fantasy because there has been some new food artifacts, and Nutrient Block is actually one more food, so the familiar decks could really thrive here. I like this because it can give you life. I really like the accidental life gain index, and Chromatic Star can't really do that, so 2 mana to tap it and gain 3 and draw a card. I don't think that's bad at all. You can obviously sacrifice it with the black draw spells to gain 3 cards instead of only 2 from the spell, which is obviously great. So I think this will find its place for sure. I'm not sure at which deck, but the color restriction isn't really there, so I think there are multiple decks that could want this card. Number 3 on the list, we have the Ilvoil Gale Blade. It's a 1 mana, it's a jellyfish warrior, which is definitely a really cool type a creature can be. It's a 1 mana, flash flying, and then 2 mana we can sacrifice the creature and draw a card. So there is probably one meta deck that could want this card, and that's Mono Blue Fairies. Now, will Fairies want this card even? I'm not sure. They have the Harrier Strix as a non-fairy 1 mana card that helps to go through. The fact that it is a flash card is definitely useful because fairies do like to play at instant speed, and then you can sacrifice it for 2 and draw a card. I think this accidental card draw is something that the deck could potentially want. You obviously have your off one mind and your ninjas, which is definitely powerful, but playing like 2 of these in the fairies deck I think could be a very valid thing to do. I personally am like 40 to 60 that it won't be played, but I think some people will definitely try it, and I'm very curious if someone will make this card work in the deck because the power level is definitely here. So we have spot number 2 here, and I will be honest, I'm really biased. We have the Gene Pollinator, 1 green, it's an artifact creature, it's a 1/2, which is a good stat line, and we have finally a walking Springleaf Drum. Now, I don't know how about you, but I've brewed many decks where I was like, okay, I would love to play a Springleaf Drum in this deck, but it's not the creature, and my deck cares a lot about all the creatures, so I can't really play the Springleaf Drum, but the Pollinator solved this problem. And again, I don't think there will be, or there is yet, a meta deck that wants this card right now, but I think this will spark a lot of very cool brews. I will definitely try to brew this card. I have some ideas, and I think there could potentially be some really high power within this card. And I just love the design. I mean, walking Springleaf Drum is everything I could ever ask for, so I'm really high on it, and let's see what's at number 1. And to nobody's surprise, we have at spot number 1 the Cryogen Relic. This is a 2-mana artifact, it's blue, which is the only thing I think that keeps it balanced. If this was like red or black, I think this card would be ban worthy even, but at blue I think it should be okay. When it ETBs or leaves the battlefield, we draw a card, and then for 2 mana we can sacrifice it and put a stun counter on up to 1 target tapped creature, so presumably a creature that is currently attacking, and that of course makes the relic leave the battlefield, which means we draw a card. Now, baseline, this is an Ichor Wellspring, right? So you play this, you draw a card, then you sacrifice it with something like Fanatical Offering, and you draw another card. It's basically another copy of Ichor Wellspring in this regard. That's cool, you know, nothing too crazy about it. The only benefit here is that it has the additional ability here, so you can put a stun counter on target creature. It makes you draw the card if you don't have the sacrifice spell. That's cool. So this will definitely be a staple of Dimmer Affinity by itself. I think it's really powerful. I could probably see this in Grixis as well, it's just that good. Now, the other option to do with this card, and I think that's the better way of playing it actually, is bouncing it. So, you know, you have decks like Boro Synthesizer or Mardu Wildfire or something like Orzhov Blade, which really rely on playing cards like the core Skyfisher or the Glinhawk, and bouncing this with those cards, it gets pretty insane. So imagine, you basically play this, you draw a card, then you play Glinhawk, you return it, you draw another card, then you can play it, draw another card, you know, return it with the Skyfisher, draw another card. It gets really, really crazy. And what I will personally try to do is probably build a Jeskai version, very aggressive Jeskai version, and this will probably be the only blue card I will be playing in the deck. So imagine this, you've got your 8 bounce targets, 4 of them are the synthesizers, which do a very similar thing, but they are much more limited, and then you've got 4 of the relics. Well, it's a complete bounce fest. You are bouncing everything, and whenever you do and replay it, you gain so much value. I think it will be pretty insane in those decks, and I promise many people will try to make this work, and this card will be a staple of many decks, I feel like. From Dimmer Affinity to Grixis Affinity to all the bounce decks I mentioned that will play probably white, I'm super high on this card, and I know most of you guys are too. This card is extremely strong, and again, probably one of the strongest cards that has come out in the recent times in Pauper. So let me know what is your top 5 from Edge of Eternities, and I will see you soon. Bye.